Some stories are told to put you to sleep, the men who share your blood. Some are told you to wake you up. All because you dared to dream bigger than them belongs to the second kind. And what would you do years later? It doesn't begin with a pinnacle of power or a prophecy of the very people who destroyed you. It begins with a silence in the palm of your hand. Vengeance or mercy, power or compassion. This is not just a story of betrayal. This is an epic saga of how one man, cast into the deepest pit, used the broken fragments of his dreams to build an empire. A journey from the depths of despair to the heights of glory, with a final twist that will redefine everything you believe about destiny and sacrifice. So settle in, because the dust of ages is about to be swept away. And before we step through the gates of history together, let me know where on earth you are listening to this story from and what time it is for you. It is truly amazing to know that, in this very moment, we, a community of souls who love epic history, are connected from all corners of the globe. Now, let the story begin. In the majestic Zagros Mountains, where the wind howled through snow-capped peaks and our eagles soared with pride in the vast sky, there lived a nomadic tribe in harmony with nature. They did not worship gods of gold and jade in magnificent temples, but revered the ancient spirits present in every blade of grass, every stream, and every star. Their patriarch was Borin, a venerable man whose face was etched with the lines of sun and wind, and among his many sons he held a special love for Kaelan. Kaelan was not like his brothers. While they were warriors, skilled hunters with calloused hands and practical eyes, Kaelan was a young man with a dreamer's gaze, always looking toward the distant horizon. He was the son of Borin's old age, the embodiment of his love for his deceased and most beloved wife. To show this love, Borin gave Kaelan a special cloak, woven from the rarest wool, dyed the color of the midnight sky and the golden dawn. That cloak, shimmering under the sun, was more than a gift. It was a symbol, a declaration. It was grace, and it was also a curse. The father's favor planted seeds of jealousy in the hearts of his sons. They saw Kaelan not as a brother, but as an outsider in their own family. Their resentment smoldered, waiting for a spark, and then Kaelan began to have dreams. "Listen to this dream," Kaelan eagerly recounted one morning, his eyes shining. "We were binding sheaves in the field, and suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while all of your sheaves gathered around and bowed down to it." A heavy silence fell. The brothers, led by Rorik, the eldest and most pragmatic, stared at him with cold eyes. "Do you intend to rule over us?" Rorik growled. "A dreaming shepherd who thinks he will be king?" To them, it was not a dream. It was a challenge, an unforgivable arrogance. But the dreams continued. This time, Kaelan saw the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowing down to him. He told not only his brothers, but also his father. Even Borin had to frown and chide his son's audacity. But deep down, his old heart etched every word, wondering about the mysterious destiny that awaited his beloved son. For the brothers, jealousy had now turned to rage. Kaelan's dream was not just personal pride, it was a betrayal. He dared to dream of golden cities, great rivers, things that belonged to the world of their enemies, the mighty and decadent Babylonian Empire to the south. It was a world completely contrary to their free, simple life and their tradition of worshiping the ancient spirits. Kaelan did not just want to stand above them, he seemed to want to renounce his very roots, and that they could not allow. Their opportunity came. One day, Borin sent Kaelan to check on the flocks his brothers were tending in a distant valley. Dressed in his splendid cloak, Kaelan set out alone, his innocent heart completely unaware of the dark conspiracy awaiting him. When his figure appeared in the distance, a bright speck against the barren land, Rorik narrowed his eyes. "Here comes the dreamer," he whispered, and a cruel smile played on the lips of the others. Few words were needed. A single nod was enough. As Kaelan approached, they fell upon him like a pack of wolves. He had no time to cry out. The cloak, the symbol of love, was brutally torn from him. They did not kill him, for Reuben, another brother with a sliver of conscience, intervened. "Let's not stain our hands with his blood," Reuben said. "Let's throw him into that dry well. Let him die slowly in the dark." They considered it a more merciful act. Kaelan was thrown into a deep, dark, and cold pit. He looked up to see the familiar faces of his brothers fading at the well's opening. Then darkness consumed everything. Above, they casually sat down, sharing their midday meal as if nothing had happened. While they were eating, a caravan unexpectedly appeared on the horizon. Their banners showed they were not ordinary merchants. They were notorious slave traders, known as the Jackals of the Desert, who specialized in supplying live goods to high-ranking officials and nobles in Babylon. A new idea, even more cruel than leaving Kaelan to die, sparked in Rorik's mind. "What do we gain if he dies?" he said. "Let's sell him. Let him live the life of a slave in that world he dreams of. That is the true punishment." They pulled Kaelan out of the pit, still dazed and trembling. Before his horrified eyes, they sold their own brother to the traders for 20 shekels of silver, weighing nearly half a pound, or about 227 grams. Kaelan screamed, he begged, but all he received was Rorik's cold stare and the savage laughter of the strangers chaining him. He was dragged away, his small figure disappearing behind the sand dunes, heading south, toward the great city of Babylon, where a life of slavery in Babylon was about to begin. To cover their crime, they slaughtered a goat and soaked Kaelan's tattered cloak in its blood. They brought it to Boren. "Father, we found this on the road," Rorik said, his voice feigning anguish. "See if it is Kaelan's cloak." The old man's heart shattered. He recognized it immediately. A wild beast has devoured him," he cried, a pain tearing through his chest. Boren mourned his beloved son for many days, inconsolable. And to deepen the tragedy, they fabricated a story, claiming to have seen traces of a rival tribe nearby. This lie not only buried the truth about Kaelan, but also planted a seed of hatred in Boren and the entire tribe, a blood debt to a non-existent enemy, pushing them closer to future conflicts. The betrayal had not just killed one person, it had poisoned an entire people. Kaelan's journey to Babylon was a living hell. Chained with other captives, he walked under the scorching desert sun, given only enough water and food to stay alive. Some stories are told to be left for the vultures, and the world of dreams and ancient spirits had vanished, replaced by a brutal reality. I am about to share with you belongs to the second kind. When he first saw the colossal walls of Babylon, he felt no awe, with a clap of thunder or a prophecy. The golden city of his dreams now appeared as a giant prison, a heavy symbol of his lost freedom. In the noisy and chaotic slave market of Babylon, where human beings were bought and sold like cattle, fate intervened. Kaelan was sold to a man named Zimri. Zimri was no ordinary nobleman. He was the captain of the royal guard, one of the most powerful and respected men in the court of King Nebuchadnezzar. Zimri bought Kaelan not for his brawn, but because he saw in the young slave's eyes an intelligence and an unbroken fire. In Zimri's opulent mansion, Kaelan learned to survive. He quickly mastered the language and customs of the Babylonians, using his intellect to work efficiently and gradually earning his master's trust. He was put in charge of Zimri's entire household. Everything he touched prospered. Zimri began to see him not as a slave, but as a trusted steward. It seemed that even in the darkest mire, the grace of the gods had not entirely forsaken him. But it was here that a new, more dangerous conflict began to form, one more perilous than his brother's jealousy. Zimri's wife, a beautiful and powerful woman, took notice of Kaelan. Her interest was not merely physical desire. She was also a high priestess of the cult of Marduk, the patron god of Babylon. In her eyes, Kaelan was a fascinating contradiction, a barbarian from the wild mountains who possessed refined intellect and beauty, a man who carried within him a belief in the ancient spirits, which she considered heresy. She was both attracted to and repulsed by him. One day, while Zimri was away, she tried to seduce Kaelan. "Come to me," she whispered, her voice like poisoned honey. "In this city of Babylon, I can give you anything you desire." Kaelan stepped back resolute. "My lady, my master has entrusted me with everything he owns. How could I do this wicked thing and sin against him and betray my own gods?" Kaelan's rejection turned the priestess's desire into fury. Humiliated, she resolved to destroy him. When Zimri returned, she wept, tore her clothes, and accused Kaelan. But her accusation was far more venomous. "He did not just try to assault me," she shrieked. "He dared to say his ancient spirits are greater than our magnificent Marduk. He committed blasphemy in your own house." This was no longer a crime of assaulting a woman. This was the crime of blasphemy, an unforgivable offense in Babylon. Zimri's anger erupted like a volcano. Despite a flicker of doubt, he could not defy a religious accusation. To protect his and his wife's honor, he ordered Kaelan's arrest. He was not taken to an ordinary prison. He was cast into the pit of the dead, Babylon's most feared dungeon, a dark subterranean vault for heretics and traitors. It was a place where men were forgotten, left to die slowly from darkness, starvation, and despair. From a trusted steward, Kaelan had once again plunged into the abyss, deeper and darker than the dry well of his past. The pit of the dead was a place where sunlight never reached. The air was thick with the stench of mold, disease, and human despair. Moans echoed in the darkness. Each day, Kaelan received only a piece of moldy bread and a ladle of foul water. He was surrounded by those who had lost all hope, bodies merely waiting to decay. For 2 long years, Kaelan existed like a ghost. This was the ultimate test of his faith. He silently screamed the names of the ancient spirits, but only the silence of the darkness answered. The dreams had led him here, but where were they now? Were his gods powerless before the might of Marduk? Had they abandoned him in the heart of the enemy's empire? Doubt gnawed at his soul, more bitter than hunger. He had reached the bottom of despair, where faith and madness were separated from a single thread. But even in the deepest darkness, a faint glimmer of light appeared. 2 new prisoners were brought into Kaelan's section. They were not common criminals. One was the king's cupbearer, the other his chief baker. Both had offended King Nebuchadnezzar and were awaiting judgment. One night, both men had strange dreams that left them deeply troubled. The next morning they sat dejected, their faces pale. "What troubles you, sirs?" Kaelan asked, his voice hoarse from disuse. "We had dreams," the cupbearer replied, "but in this God-forsaken place, there is no one to interpret them for us." A tiny spark of hope flickered in Kaelan's heart. "Do not interpretations belong to the gods?" he said. "Tell them to me." The cupbearer recounted that he dreamt of a vine with 3 branches, which budded, blossomed, and bore ripe clusters of grapes. He took the grapes, pressed them into the king's cup, and presented it to him. Kaelan closed his eyes, and for the first time in a long while, he felt a faint connection to the unseen world. "This is its meaning," he said. "The 3 branches are 3 days. In 3 days, the king will pardon you and restore you to your position." He then looked directly into the official's eyes, his voice pleading, "When you are free, please remember me. Speak a word to the king about the injustice I have suffered." Next, the chief baker told his dream. He dreamt he was carrying 3 baskets of white bread on his head, but birds flew down and ate the bread from the topmost basket. Kaelan's face grew solemn. "This is its meaning," he said slowly. "The 3 baskets are also 3 days. In 3 days the king will hang you, and the birds of the air will eat your flesh." 3 days later, everything happened exactly as Kaelan had foretold. The cupbearer was restored to his post, while the chief baker was executed. In the joy of his freedom, The cupbearer completely forgot his promise. Kaelan's plea vanished into thin air. The door of hope that had just creaked open was slammed shut in his face. The official's forgetfulness was more painful than his brother's betrayal. It was the world's indifference, a confirmation that he was just a nameless grain of sand in the vast desert of the Babylonian Empire. 2 more years passed. 2 years of silence, of darkness, and of bitter forgetfulness. Kaelan had almost given up. And then, just as all hope seemed to be extinguished, destiny knocked unexpectedly. King Nebuchadnezzar, the great ruler of the Babylonian Empire, began to have dreams that robbed him of his sleep. He dreamt of 7 fat, healthy cows grazing by the Euphrates River. Suddenly 7 other cows, gaunt and skeletal, emerged from the river and devoured the 7 fat cows. The king awoke, drenched in sweat, only to fall back asleep and have another dream. He saw 7 heads of grain, healthy and golden, growing on a single stalk. Then 7 other heads of grain, thin and scorched by the east wind, sprouted and swallowed up the 7 healthy heads. The next morning the king summoned all the magicians, wise men, and high priests of Babylon, but no one could explain the meaning of these strange dreams. The king's anger grew. It was at this moment, amidst the court's confusion, that the cupbearer suddenly remembered. His face paled with shame and fear. "Your Majesty," he knelt, "today I must confess my fault. Years ago, when I was imprisoned in the pit of the dead, there was a young Hebrew man there. He interpreted a dream for me, and everything happened exactly as he said." The king did not waste a second. "Bring him to me," he commanded. Kaelan was dragged from the darkness, the sunlight blinding his eyes for the first time in years. He was washed, shaved, and given clean clothes. When he stood before the throne of the most powerful king in the world, Kaelan showed no fear. "I have heard that you have the gift of interpreting dreams," the king said, his voice full of authority. Kaelan bowed humbly. "It is not I, Your Majesty. It is the gods who will give the king the answer he desires." After hearing the king recount the 2 dreams, Kaelan took a deep breath. This was his moment. He did not merely interpret the dream. He made a political move of incredible audacity and danger. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice echoing through the great hall, "the 2 dreams are one and the same. The gods are using them to show the king what is about to happen, and the 7 fat cows and 7 healthy heads of grain are 7 years of great abundance to come throughout the land of Babylon. But afterward, the 7 gaunt cows with a clap of thunder or a prophecy are 7 years of a terrible famine that will follow, a famine so severe that the years of plenty will be forgotten." Then, instead of stopping there, Kaelan looked directly at the high priest of Marduk, who was watching him with suspicion. "This is a warning from both the great Marduk of Babylon and the ancient spirits of the mountains. The gods are testing your Majesty's wisdom. They wish to see if a great king can lead his people through this trial." By linking the gods together, Kaelan neutralized any potential accusation of heresy and elevated his interpretation to a sacred universal message. He continued, "Therefore let the king find a discerning and wise man, and set him over the land of Babylon. Let that man collect 1/5 of the harvest during the 7 years of plenty, storing the food in the king's storehouses. By doing this, the nation will have enough food to survive the 7 years of famine." The entire court was stunned into silence by the young man's wisdom and foresight. King Nebuchadnezzar looked at Kaelan, his eyes filled with astonishment and admiration. "Can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the spirit of the gods?" the king declared. "Since the gods have made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you." That very day, Kaelan, the shepherd boy sold into slavery, the prisoner forgotten in the pit of the dead, was given the king's signet ring, clothed in fine linen, and had a gold chain placed around his neck. He was appointed Chancellor of the granaries, the second most powerful man in the entire Babylonian Empire. From the mire, he had risen to the pinnacle of glory. The dreams of his youth had not deceived him. They had only shown him a path far more arduous than he could have ever imagined. His destiny, and that of an empire, had now begun. For the next 7 years, Kaelan worked tirelessly. He traveled throughout the land, building enormous granaries, establishing a fair and efficient system of taxation and food storage. The fertile lands of Mesopotamia yielded unprecedented harvests, and the king's storehouses filled to overflowing, so much that they stopped keeping records. Kaelan, now a true Babylonian nobleman, was respected by all for his talent and integrity. And then, just as prophesied, the 7 years of plenty came to an end. The famine began, the skies withheld their rain, the earth cracked, and the crops withered. The hunger did not only plague Babylon, but spread throughout the surrounding lands, including the distant Zagros Mountains. Back home, Boran and his clan were also facing desperation. Their flocks were dying, and their stored food was gone. When rumors reached them that in Babylon the great Chancellor had foreseen the famine and had enough grain to sell to other nations, Boran summoned his sons. "Go down there," he commanded, "and buy some grain so that we may not starve to death." He kept his youngest son, Leon, the only other child of his beloved wife, at home, fearing that some harm might befall him. The 10 brothers, led by Rorik, made the long and arduous journey to Babylon. When they reached the capital, they were overwhelmed by its order and power. They were brought before the Chancellor of the granaries, who sat on a high chair, dressed in splendid Babylonian attire, and spoke through an interpreter. They had no idea it was the very brother they had sold so many years ago. They bowed low before him, their foreheads touching the ground, exactly as in Kaelan's first dream. Kaelan recognized them instantly. His heart skipped a beat. A storm of emotion surged within him, the anger of the old betrayal, the pain of his years of slavery and imprisonment, but also a flicker of curiosity, and an unnamed sorrow at seeing the familiar faces, now gaunt with hunger. He decided to test them. He wanted to know if time and guilt had changed their hearts. "You are spies," Kaelan said in Babylonian, his voice as cold as ice through the interpreter. "You have come to see where our land is unprotected." The brothers were terrified, stammering their innocence. "No, my lord, we are honest men, come only to buy food. We are all brothers, 10 sons of one father in the land of the Zagros Mountains. There were originally 12 of us, but one is no more, and the youngest is at home with our father." Upon hearing "the youngest," Kaelan's heart clenched. Leon, the full brother he had never met. A plan began to form in his mind, a grim test. "If you are honest men, prove it. One of you will stay here as a hostage. The rest of you take the grain back to your families and return with your youngest brother. Otherwise, I will treat you as spies, and you shall all die." He ordered the arrest of Simeon, one of the most cruel to him that fateful day, and had him imprisoned before the others. He sold them grain, but secretly ordered his servants to return the silver they had paid into each man's sack. When they discovered the silver on their journey home, the brothers were even more terrified, believing the Chancellor was setting a trap for them. When they returned and told Boran everything, the old father was heartbroken. "You have taken Kaelan from me, and now you want to take Leon as well," he wept. But the famine worsened. Finally, it was Rorik, the one who had suggested selling Kaelan, who stepped forward to vouch for him. "Send the boy with me," Rorik said to his father, his voice filled with resolve. "If I do not bring him back to you safely, I will bear the blame before you all my life." And so they once again set out for Babylon, this time with Leon among them. When they were again presented to Kaelan, he invited them to his home for a meal. He treated them with great kindness, especially Leon, the younger brother for whom he felt an instant strange connection. The brothers were utterly confused by this treatment, unable to understand the powerful Chancellor's intentions. But the test was not over. Kaelan was preparing for the final, most dramatic act. He wanted to push them to their limit, to see if they would abandon Leon as they had once abandoned him. It was a test not only to see their remorse, but also to confront the demon in his own heart. And then Kaelan made a move no one could have anticipated, a move that plunged everyone, including himself, into a game of life and death. After the feast, as the brothers prepared to leave with their new sacks of grain, Kaelan gave a secret order. It was not for a common silver cup. He commanded his steward to covertly place the Chancellor's seal, his ultimate symbol of authority, a personal token from the king himself, into the sack of Leon, the youngest brother. And to make the trap perfect, he deliberately allowed the high priest of Marduk, who had always been jealous and sought to undermine him, to accidentally witness this command. No sooner had the caravan passed through the city gates than Kaelan's royal guard, led by the steward, galloped after them. "Stop! Why have you repaid good with evil, stealing my master's treasure?" the steward shouted. The brothers, though shocked, were adamant in their innocence. "Some stories are find the stolen item with any one of us, and let him die, and the rest of us will become my lord's slaves." The story I am about to share with you belongs to the second kind. Began. It doesn't begin with a clap of thunder from the eldest to the youngest, booming from the heavens. And then when they opened Leon's sack, everyone froze. The Chancellor's seal of solid gold glittered menacingly under the Babylonian sun. The world collapsed at the brothers' feet. They tore their clothes in despair and were hauled back to the palace. This was the moment Kaelan had been waiting for, but it was far worse than he had imagined. He sat on his chair, trying to maintain a cold facade, but his heart was pounding like a war drum. Behind him he could feel the triumphant smirk of the high priest. The game had spun out of his control. Stealing the Chancellor's seal was not mere theft. It was an act of treason. The penalty was not just death for the thief, but the annihilation of his entire clan. Kaelan had walked himself into a trap with no escape. If he spared them, he would be accused of complicity, of shielding a traitor, and the high priest would have all the cause he needed to depose him. If he punished them according to Babylonian law, he would be signing the death warrant for his own brother and family. Every eye in the great hall was fixed on him. Some stories are told to put you to sleep. This was the razor's edge climax. Some are told to wake you up. Hatred and the story I am about to share with you belongs to the second kind. Would he save his family? It doesn't begin with a clap of thunder or his prophecy booming from the heavens. It begins with a silence. The silence in the great hall was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Sweat poured down the brothers' foreheads. Leon, the innocent boy, trembled with fear, not understanding why he was at the center of this nightmare. The high priest's gaze was like a hawk's, waiting for its prey to die. And then, in that seemingly endless moment, one man stepped forward. Not Leon, not Reuben. It was Rorik, the eldest brother, the one who had suggested selling Kaelan. He fell prostrate on the cold stone floor, not daring to look up. "My lord," Rorik began, his voice hoarse and broken, "please let me speak. The guilt does not belong to this boy. The guilt is ours." He took a deep breath, and then, like a dam breaking, he told the entire story. He spoke of a younger brother with dreams, of a coat, and of blinding jealousy. He spoke of the dry well, of the 20 pieces of silver, of the lie that had shattered their old father's heart. He made no excuses, no pleas. He confessed. "Years ago we sold a brother of ours. We thought God did not see. But now he has found us out," Rorik said, tears streaming down his weathered face. "Please, my lord, let the boy go back to his father. If he does not return, our father will surely die of grief. Let me stay here. Let me be your slave in his place. Punish me, for I am the one who is guilty." That was the moment when all the defensive walls in Kaelan's heart crumbled. These were not the words of a man afraid of power. This was the voice of true repentance. Rorik, the proud warrior, was now willing to sacrifice his own freedom to save his brother and protect his father. The circle of betrayal and guilt was finally being closed by sacrifice. Kaelan could bear it no longer. He signaled for all the guards, interpreters, and Babylonian officials to leave. "Everyone out!" he shouted, his voice cracking. Only he and his 11 brothers remained in the vast hall. They stared at him, confused, terrified. And then, for the first time in over 20 years, Kaelan spoke in the language of his tribe, the language of the Zagros Mountains, a sound that no Babylonian could understand. "It is I, Kaelan." He could no longer contain himself and broke down, the tears of 2 decades of pain, loneliness, and suppression pouring from his eyes. The brothers were stunned, their faces turning ashen. The powerful Chancellor of Babylon was the little brother they had destroyed. But this was not the end of the game. After moments of tearful reunion, Kaelan knew he had to act. He summoned the king and the high priest back. Standing before the throne, he took the seal from his steward's hand. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice now calm and filled with authority, "this was not a theft. This was the final proof sent by the gods." He turned to the high priest, his gaze sharp. "The gods tested the loyalty of Babylon's subjects with a famine, and today they have tested my own compassion with my own family. By forgiving them, we do not just save one family. We show the entire empire that the greatness of Babylon lies not just in its military might, but in a mercy vaster than the desert. This is a good omen, a sign that your Majesty's rule is blessed by the gods." Kaelan had turned a deadly political trap into an act demonstrating power, wisdom, and absolute loyalty. He did not just forgive his family. He used that very forgiveness as a weapon to crush the high priest's conspiracy and spectacularly solidify his own position. The king smiled, completely convinced. The game of life and death was over. Kaelan had not just won, he had redefined the rules. In the epic saga of Kaelan's story, which moment touched your soul the deepest? Was it the pain of betrayal at the bottom of the pit, the strength of an unwavering faith in the pit of the dead, or the tears of a great forgiveness that conquered all? Share your thoughts below, because in Kaelan's story, each of us can find a piece of our own destiny. News that Chancellor Kaelan's family had arrived in Babylon quickly spread throughout the palace. The king, rather than being angry, was immensely pleased with Kaelan's wise handling of the situation. He commanded, "Tell them not to be concerned about their possessions, because the best of all the land of Babylon will be theirs. Give them the region of Goshen, the most fertile land, so they may raise their livestock and live." Kaelan sent his brothers on their way back with carts full of grain, silver, and precious gifts. But the most important gift was a message. "Go and tell my father, Kaelan is still alive, and he is ruler of all the land of Babylon." The great migration began. Borin's entire clan, 70 people in all, left the familiar Zagros Mountains to enter the new land. The reunion between Borin and Kaelan was a moving sight. The old father, who had mourned his supposedly dead son for 22 years, now embraced him, a powerful chancellor of the mightiest empire in the world. "Now I can die in peace," Borin said through his tears, "for I have seen your face and know that you are still alive." The reunion healed all wounds. Their family lived and prospered in the land of Babylon, protected under Kaelan's power. The years passed in peace. Before he died, Borin blessed all his sons, including Kaelan. After their father's death, the brothers were once again afraid. They thought Kaelan had only forgiven them because their father was alive, and that now he would seek his revenge. They came and knelt before Kaelan. "We are your slaves." Kaelan looked at them, and he wept again, but this time they were not tears of pain, but of love. "Do not be afraid," he said, his voice warm. "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So then do not be afraid. I will provide for you and your children." His forgiveness was absolute and complete. He lived to see his children's children becoming a great patriarch within an empire. Many years later, when Kaelan was old and felt his last day approaching, he gathered all his descendants and his brothers. He did not speak of power or possessions in Babylon. He looked to the north, toward the distant mountains. "God will surely come to your aid," he said, "and take you up out of this land to the land he promised on oath to our forefathers." Then he made them swear an oath. It was not to build him a magnificent tomb in Babylon where he had attained all power and glory. "When that day comes," he whispered, "you must carry my bones with you." He did not want to be buried as a chancellor of Babylon. He wanted to be remembered as a son of the mountains. He had lived as a Babylonian to save his family, but he would die as a man of his tribe, with faith in the promise of the ancient spirits. Kaelan died in peace, and his bones were placed in a coffin, a reminder that the story was not over. Centuries later, when his descendants, under the leadership of a new guide, made their great journey back to the Promised Land, they carried Kaelan's coffin with them. They carried his legacy across deserts, through trials and battles. Finally, they buried him in his homeland, in the shadow of the majestic Zagros Mountains. The oath sworn under the stars so long ago had been fulfilled. The destiny of the shepherd boy who had dreams was now complete. He had come home. Our journey with Kaelan through the dust of time has come to an end. A story that proves that even from the most bitter betrayal, forgiveness can still blossom. And sometimes the path to the greatest destiny is paved with unimaginable pain. If you also felt the echo of history and wish to continue exploring other epic sagas with our channel, stories of empires rising and falling, of heroes overcoming adversity, then do not hesitate. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because every story is a gateway to another time, and we are always here, ready to open it with you.